Aloha. So my name is Ryan, and my question is about styles of communication. So my partner tends to send me very long messages explaining how he feels, and they're thoughtful, they're quite lengthy, and you can tell he's put a lot of effort into crafting those messages. And, sometimes I challenge him and say, why don't you just come and talk to me? But one of the things he's told me is that he does feel like I'm a little bit of a word ninja, and I could see that. It is my profession as well, so probably a little bit of that is translating over into my relationship for sure. And it's a little bit hard sometimes, I think, for him to stay calm and collected and express his thoughts at the same rate that I'm discussing them with him. So this is sort of his way of making sure that what he says is intentional and makes sense. So I just wanted to know if there's anything that I can do to help this situation. And, in your opinion, do you think this is a good use of technology or not?
Juicy. So there's lots of things in there. And I'm sure we can relate, right? About having a preference, right? Mm-hmm. So you might have a preference for certain kinds of conversations happening in certain ways. I can, a kind of argument that myself and my husband might have is around, if we're trying to decide on what to eat, and then and over text messages, but then it's going back and forth, and I'm like, why didn't we just talk over the phone? That would have been a more efficient use of time. This felt so effortful, right? So what the listener is talking about is, right, this effort part of it that is also involved in our communication. And certain media can showcase that effort more readily than others, like the length of a message can showcase some of that effort that somebody put in. And we read a lot of things into it. So one of the things that we know from these layering kind of aspect is that many times people have different tendencies for how they soften messages and how they enhance messages. So sometimes in a text message, a text-based message, the emotional part that we might convey non-verbally, people aren't as skilled in doing that. So I know for myself, sometimes I will write the nonverbal message, that the nonverbal behavior that I might have done in person, I might write about it in the text so that they can understand the context of that. So I'd say, oh, that's too bad. And then I would put in, I'm hugging you like a bear hug, but not too tight that you can't breathe, but just on the edge of that with a sad face. Do you know what I mean? So I'll put that extra element in there in order to try to compensate for some of these things. So my advice or my suggestion would be to talk about it like they've done, right? To talk about what are your needs versus what is the other person's needs. And that it's not an all or nothing situation. So they've already gone on that path, which is great, right? So they have some idea of what the limitations are and what they're not. And so that maybe there might be some way of easing some of this. So maybe a partner has to write when something is sort of lengthy initially, in an email. That's totally legitimate. And now you understand that that's where it comes from. But that doesn't mean that we can't follow up with an in-person. So I would think about sort of like sequences in terms of, well, if it has to start there, great. It has to start there, right? And then we can have another conversation or follow up in person. So then that's a way of sort of compromising on each other's needs. But those needs have to be reconciled with not only the speaker, but the receiver, right? So you have to do both of those things. How can I best communicate my message to you also entails how best do you need to hear, what's the best way for you to hear this particular message? So that's that whole frameworks and layering that matters.
Please subscribe, follow, and share to keep this podcast alive. Mahalo.